Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Bridges, Bridges,
Excused.
Buckner,
Excused.
Coleman, Cook, Coram, Danielson,
Good morning.
Donovan, Fields,
Present.
Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez,
Excused.
Hanson, Henriksen, Heisey, Holbert, Hawkes Lewis, Kirkmeyer, Kolker, Lee, Liston, Lundeen, Moreno, Pedersen, Priola, Rankin, Rodriguez, Scott,
Here.
Simpson, Smallwood, Sonnenberg,
Morning.
Story,
Excused.
Winter, Winter,
Excused.
Woodward,
Here.
Zenzinger. Mr. President,
Been here the whole time. The morning roll call is, for now, "30 present, 0 absent, 5 excused." We have a quorum. Will the good senator from Centennial please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Members, please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal, Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move the reading of the journal of Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 be dispensed with and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Senate Services.
correctly printed Senate Bill 193, correctly engrossed Senate Bill 114 and 157, correctly revised House Bill 1227 and 1262, correctly re-revised 1226, 1252, and House Bill 1275.
Committee reports.
March 30th, 2022, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1001 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. March 30th, 2022, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1118 be referred to the Committee for the Whole with favorable recommendation, with the recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. March 30th, 2022, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1025 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. March 30th, 2022, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1098 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. March 30th, 2022, Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1231 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation and with a recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. March 30th, 2022, Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 149 be postponed indefinitely. March 30th, 2022, the Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration and has had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar. Confirm members of the Colorado Prescription Drug Affordability Review Board for a term expiring September 27, 2022. James Justin Vandenberg, Farm D, BCPS of Denver, Colorado, appointed for terms expiring September 27, 2023. Catherine Harshberg of Holyoke, Colorado, appointed for terms expiring September 27, 2024. Gail Meisner, MD, FACP, AA, HIVS of Snowmass Village, Colorado, to serve as board chair, appointed. Sami Diab, MD of Greenwood Village, Colorado, appointed. March 30th, 2022, Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 98 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. March 30th, 2022, the Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1068 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by the senators from Fort Collins and Colorado Springs.
The motion is to proceed out of order for moments of personal privilege. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. We will proceed out of order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, it is Senator Janal's and my honor to pay tribute today.
Senator Liston, could you
Yes.
request a moment of personal?
Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. President, I would like to ask a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Members, it is Senator Janal's and my honor to pay tribute today to the good, heroic people of Ukraine. Over the last 5 weeks, we've all been distressed and mortified by the cowardly attacks on the people of the great country of Ukraine. What we have witnessed over the last several weeks is the mass murder of the citizens of Ukraine and the utter destruction of its cities and towns by the Russian army led by the despicable Vladimir Putin. It is, for me, as well as probably most of you, incomprehensible to see the utter destruction of Mariupol, Kharkiv, and numerous other Ukrainian towns and villages. In their great hour of need, I hope you will join myself, Senator Janal, and our guests as we wear the colors of the Ukrainian flag on your lapel until this savage war is concluded. On an encouraging note, we have witnessed the brave struggle by the Ukrainian people to preserve their freedom and autonomy of Ukraine. With this in mind, I would like to have my good colleague from Fort Collins and her remarks.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I ask for a moment of personal privilege?
Granted.
Thank you. Thank you for those words, good Senator from Colorado Springs. We are now more than a month into the war on Ukraine. 1 month of tragedy, 1 month of needless suffering, 1 month of pain and horror and bloodshed. Families ripped apart, innocent women and children shot to death in the streets of their beloved country. Putin's reckless war has so far cost thousands of lives, displaced millions of Ukrainians, and hurt the global economy in profound and damaging ways. Oil prices have skyrocketed, the ruble has plummeted, and this despot leader continues his cruel and delusional war of vanity and the need for power, while Ukrainians pay the price. I myself have Ukrainian, Polish, and Russian ancestry. My grandparents on both sides immigrated in the early 1900s to Ellis Island and settled in New England for a better life. In talking to my grandparents and parents, there were many reasons why they left their homeland. religion, opportunity, political, and probably many other reasons why they left their close and very large families to come to America. Ukrainians are a proud, kind, hardworking, and unwavering people. And they've demonstrated for weeks now their tenacity and their courage in the face of terror and hopelessness. As these events have unfolded, ordinary folks across the globe have watched this in horror. Myself and members of this chamber are among them. I have been proud of the outpouring of support Colorado has shown for the people of Ukraine. From working to divest from Russian financial assets to helping arm the Ukrainian resistance, Colorado has shown once again that when confronted with a challenge, we stand together and do what's right. And that's why I'm proud today to join my friend from across the aisle, a good senator from Colorado Springs, for this tribute. But the fight for Ukraine is far from over. While Putin shows nervous indecisiveness, misled by his advisors, let down by his generals, and berated by his people, the Ukrainian military is heroically holding its own, and the Ukrainian people stand defiant. They have the support of the entire world behind them, a show of force unlike anything that we've seen in decades. If Putin's goal was to divide, he has failed. We stand together, united. Now is the time to lean in and to fight for what's right. Together we must stand up to this bully and loudly proclaim together that enough is enough. This atrocity cannot stand, and Ukraine will prevail. God bless Ukraine, and God bless the people of Ukraine. Thank you.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, would it be permissible if I read the tribute?
Yes, please proceed.
Very good. Members, the Senate of the Colorado Legislature, convened in the second regular session of the 73rd General Assembly, hereby honors Ukraine and its displaced peoples. On the 24th of February, Ukraine was invaded without cause or provocation by Russian armed forces. Since Russia first breached Ukrainian sovereignty, thousands of Ukrainians, including innocent women and children, have been killed, with thousands more injured. In addition to the thousands of deaths and injuries, millions of Ukrainians have been uprooted and displaced since the beginning of the invasion, resulting in the worst refugee crisis Europe has seen since World War II. Incessant Russian bombardments have left Ukrainian towns and cities in ruins. Though the physical damage sustained to Ukrainian homes, infrastructure, building, and institutions is significant, it doesn't compare to the damage done to Ukrainian lives, hopes, and dreams. The Senate of the Colorado Legislature shows its unwavering support for and recognizes the monumental sacrifice of Ukrainians who are valiantly fighting for a free Ukraine. Similarly, the Senate recognizes and stands with the sizable population of relatives and those with ties to Ukraine who live in Colorado. The Senate also urges the Biden administration and NATO to provide as much military assistance as is appropriate under the current circumstances for the brave freedom fighters of Ukraine. On request of Senator Larry Liston and Senator Joanne Janal, given this 31st day of March 2022 at the state capitol of Denver, Colorado. That is our tribute.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. With your permission, I would like to introduce our guests from Ukraine today. They are in the back over there. And as I read your names to be recognized, would you please stand? From the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, we have Dr. Eugenia Olesneski and her daughter, Vesna, which means spring, Vesna Killian, Zoriana Killian, which means starry night, and Nadia Olesniski, who is a cousin to Dr. Olesniski, and Ihor Figulis, a cousin as well. Also, faculty of, I believe it's physics, Dr. Dimitro Bashko, Dr. Anthony Pinchuk, and a student from the physics department, Victoria Sabchuk. And from the University of Northern Colorado, we have Olga Barron, who is on the faculty up at UNC, Victoria Kashperska, who is a student at UNC, and her mother, Anna Kovalenko. And from the University of Colorado in Boulder, we have Anton Pelipchenko and John Larchenko. And I want to welcome you all. And they all have Ukrainian ties. Some are from Ukraine. And thank you.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if possible, I'd like for a few moments where our fellow senators can greet our guests, if that would be permissible.
Thank you, senators, for that tribute this morning in honoring the people of Ukraine, and the Senate will stand in a brief recess to meet with our guests.
Thank you.
The Senate will come back to order. Will the clerk please add Senators Winter and Gonzalez to the roll? Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Will the clerk please read the titles to all the bills on the consent calendar?
House Bill 1227, Representative Mullica, Senator Smallwood, concerning the continuation of the Healthcare Workforce Data Advisory Group and in connection therewith, implementing the recommendation in the Department of Regulatory Agency's Sunset Report to repeal the advisory group. House Bill 1262, Representative Sullivan and Snyder, Senators Rodriguez and Cook, concerning the continuation of the authority of the Director of the Division of Workers' Compensation to impose fines on an employer for a subsequent failure to carry workers' compensation insurance within a specified period after a previous failure and in connection therewith, implementing the recommendation in the 2021 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies. Senate Bill 157, Senators Holbert and Fenberg, Representative Hooten and Van Winkle, concerning the enforcement of laws relating to unfair business practices committed by regulated persons.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of all the bills listed on the third reading of bills consent calendar, which consists of House Bill 1227, House Bill 1262, and Senate Bill 157.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of all the bills in the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes in any of the bills in the third reading of bills consent calendar? Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. With all due respect to my friend from Denver, the chair of the Senate Business Committee, and also the senator from Weld County, I ask to be recorded as a no vote on 1262.
The Minority Leader will be recorded as a no vote on 1262. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1262.
Senator Smallwood will be recorded as a no vote on 1262. Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stipulate to all the obligatory honorific comments and request to be recorded as a no vote on 1262.
Senator Lundin will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1262. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be recorded as no vote on 1262 as well, please.
Senator Sonnenberg will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1262. With a vote of 32 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 3 excused, House Bill 1227 is passed. Co-sponsors. House Bill 1227. With a vote of 28 ayes, 4 noes, 0 absent, 3 excused, 1262 is passed. Co-sponsors. Majority Leader Moreno. Senators Gonzalez, Danielson, Kolker, Jaquez Lewis, Pedersen, Priola, with a vote of 32 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 3 excused, Senate Bill 157 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Lee, Majority Leader Moreno, Pedersen, Danielson, Jaquez Lewis, Priola, Quorum, Zenzinger, Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over Senate Bill 114 to tomorrow, Friday, April 1st.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 114 to tomorrow, April 1st. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Senate Bill 114 will be laid over to tomorrow. Will the clerk please add Senator Bridges to the roll? General orders, second reading of bills. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of the general orders, second reading of bills, and Senator Coleman will take the chair.
Thank you.
Help yourself to some goldfish.
Thank you. The committee will come to order, and the Colt rule is relaxed for everybody all up in here. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1089?
House Bill 1089, Representative Woodward, Senator Winter, concerning a requirement that transportation network companies provide insurance to protect individuals from damages caused by uninsured motorists.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1089 and the Transportation and Energy Committee report.
To the Transportation and Energy Committee report, Senator Winter.
In the Transportation and Energy Committee, we reduced the liability from $1 million to $500,000.
Any discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of the Transportation and Energy Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment at the desk, L009.
There's a member of the desk. Will the clerk please read L009?
And I move L009.
Amendment L009 by Senator Winter. Amend the transportation.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This again reduces the liability to $200,000 per person and $400,000 per vehicle. And I urge a yes vote on L009.
Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of L009. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L009 is adopted. To the bill, Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you get into a TNC, most commonly, often Uber and Lyft, there is currently, if you are in an accident that's not caused by the driver, there's no protection for the driver or the passenger. And as we see TNCs becoming a bigger part of the market, increasing lane miles, this is offering some protection should an accident occur in a TNC, and I urge a yes vote on 1089.
Any discussion on 1089? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of 1089. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and 1089 is adopted. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1165?
House Bill 1165, Representatives Snyder and Soper, Senators Lee and Gardner, concerning implementation of the Committee on Legal Services recommendation in connection with legislative review of state agencies' roles.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We move House Bill 221165. There is no committee report.
To the bill. There's a member of the desk. Will the clerk please read L001?
Amendment L001.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L001.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, you may have been asking yourself every day, one of the most important questions on your mind every morning is, will House Bill 1165 be laid over for another day? And why? Why? Inquiring minds wanted to know. And the reason has been, this is the rule review bill, and as you know, what the rule review bill does is continue all of the rules that have been promulgated in the past cycle unless they violated statutory authority. Well, we had an issue with a rule with respect to the Family and Medical Leave Act in the Department of Personnel and Administration, in which the Committee on Legal Services believed that the department had exceeded authority, but not for a bad reason. It was one of these things that happens. And so the department brought through, I don't recall who the sponsor is, House Bill 1266, which fixed the problem. 1266 has now been signed by the governor. The department now has authority for this little issue in Family Medical Leave Act. And what L001 does is remove that particular rule as being one that would not be extended. So it's very important that we approve L001. I ask for an aye vote.
Motion is the adoption of L001. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L001 is adopted. To the bill, Senator Lee.
With the approval of that amendment, we now have a clean rule review bill for the first time in quite a while, where there are no exceptions in the rule review. So on the occasion of this historic moment, we ask for an aye vote on the rule review bill.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you. And that's not to say that every bill that, or every regulation that was reviewed did not exceed authority. There were actually a few that our staff and the Office of Legislative Legal Services called to the attention of departments, and they said, yeah, you have a point. So we have a clean bill, and we're able to extend all of the rules. We ask for an aye vote.
Senator Sonnenberg, do you still want to speak? Senator Sonnenberg. You're still muted.
There we go. Now
There we go.
the mute button works. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have raised this question before, that the legislature has actually failed to do its job on a regular basis. For example, many of the rules that are put in place each and every year are put in place from a general statute. And I'll read from that statute. It says, from time to time, the board may adopt suitable rules and regulations as are necessary or expedient for the conduct of its business and administration. When I was in school, we learned in government class and in civics class that we have three branches of government. Those three branches of government are the executive branch, which is supposed to enforce these rules or enforce the legislation, and us as legislators are to make the rules. We have given so much power to the executive branch that they make rules that we are unaware of. And as you go down and do a search on the Secretary of State's website at all of the rules that they have implemented, I think you will be astounded. For example, governing the suspension and revocation of permits for the transportation of hazardous and nuclear materials from motor vehicle. Shouldn't we as a legislature do that? The reason we're doing this rule review bill today is because we haven't done our job, and this bill just ratifies us giving the executive branch that authority. I'm concerned about the way we do business and giving them that authority. With all due respect to the sponsors, who I know work very hard on this on a regular basis, and my good friend from Colorado Springs and I had this discussion in the House over some rules. With that said, I just wanted to bring that to light, that we ought to keep track of what we're doing with regard to rules and what authority we have given to the executive branch. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Got it. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the good senator from Sterling for those cogent and incisive remarks, and in the nature of a civics lesson about separation of powers. In fact, though, all of the rules that are enacted or that are proposed by the departments, the executive departments, are in fact reviewed meticulously by the Office of Legislative Legal Services. Your employees, our agents in that office, and it is an office of the legislature, review all those rules very carefully And we have 7 o'clock meetings, which the good senator from Sterling is welcome to attend at any time to review in detail those rules. And the rules, if they violate the express authority of the statute, if they exceed the express authority of the statute, they are brought to our attention and we discuss them, debate them, and if they do exceed, we reject them, which is what happened with the personnel rule that was discussed this morning. So I understand the concern of the senator from Sterling, but the legislature is doing its job through its agents in the Office of Legislative Legal Services.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the comments of the senator from Sterling, and I agree with them. The General Assembly has, over the course of many, many years, as has the United States Congress, as have, I would venture to guess, the legislative branch of all of our states and territories, surrendered far too much authority to the executive branch through broad grants of statutory authority, saying you may pass rules and regulations to do X, Y, or Z, and then it happens. The interesting thing about Colorado is that pursuant to this rule review process, I think it is fairly unique. One would wish that the United States Congress had a similar kind of process, which is review each and every rule and do not let it become a rule unless the General Assembly says, yes, that is consistent with our grant of authority. I think the senator from Sterling takes issue with what I often do, which is we granted too much authority. But at least we have this process of the rule review process that says, we think you went too far from what we said. So I hope that is an ongoing discussion here in the Colorado General Assembly about how much authority are we giving to the executive branch. Having said that, my friend from Colorado Springs, that's not an ambiguous statement because it's me talking to him. I'm not sure who the senator from Sterling meant when he said his good friend from Colorado Springs, but I asked for an aye vote on the rule review bill. Thank you.
The motion is the adoption of House Bill 1165. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. 1165 is passed. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1153?
House Bill 1153, Representatives Tipper and Asgar, Senators Bridges and Moreno, concerning affirming parenthood by adoption for a person who did not give birth when the child is conceived as a result of assisted reproduction.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1153 and the Health and Human Services Committee report.
To the Health and Human Services Committee report. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the Health and Human Services Committee, we made an amendment that will hope to change the voluntary acknowledgement of paternity to the voluntary acknowledgement of parentage in order to be more inclusive. I ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Motion is the adoption of the Health and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Health and Human Services Committee report is adopted. There is an amendment of the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L004?
Amendment L004 by Senator...
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L004.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L004 is a continuation of the work that was done in committee, colleagues, you'll notice that if you come down and check out L004, it's a couple of pages, and usually that gives cause for concern, but let me tell you why you shouldn't be concerned about this amendment, and that's because of the diligent work done by the minority leader in committee. As we all know, he's not even a regular member of that committee, but was subbing in that day. You know, in this building, I've learned that some of the best legislators go out and pull out the statute book and check out the surrounding context for a bill and check out what's going on and where it fits in. And that's exactly what the minority leader did. and realized that the amendment that we had proposed was pretty limited because we were trying to address a very narrow circumstance, but there could be cause for confusion in the statutes if we didn't make conforming amendments to the entire section. And it turns out actually that we found out that had we not done what the minority leader is suggesting that we do right now, we would actually be out of compliance with federal law as well. And so, you know, that is what the type of experience I think that the minority leader brings to this building. Very grateful that he brought this to our attention, and I ask for an aye vote on the amendment.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm always nervous when a member of a committee walks over and pulls a book off the shelf. I'm especially nervous when that member is the minority leader, and I am delighted this time with the result of that conversation. And I believe that the minority leader has something to say. Again, ask for an aye vote on the amendment.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsors for their kind words. Coincidental or absolutely appropriate, learning to go over and grab the statute books is something that I learned from Senator Pat Stedman. He found a way to strike fear or worry, concern, curiosity in my heart by doing that. So the way this evolved in committee is L002 was offered, which has been adopted in the committee report. And in looking in the bill, all of House Bill 1153 is located within Title 19. But L002 was offered, and in looking at the amendment, that's in Title 19, but also in Titles 14 and 25. So I got up, walked over, pulled out those three statute books, Titles 14, 19, and 25. And when I got to Title 19, Section 4-105, and then went down through it, I realized, and you're welcome to come up and grab this if you'd like, I don't need it, but I realized that we were changing terminology in part of that section of statute away from words like paternity to parent. Have I suddenly become a champion for same-sex adoption or same-sex couples having children? No, I don't mean to be opposed to that, but in testimony, what we heard from witnesses was there were occasions when people who relied on the donations of sperm or egg, people who had children and adopted, that in some occasions, the person who made that type of donation had more right, more claim to the child than the two people who were acting as the parents. Doesn't matter their gender. That's a problem. So I started to look at this more closely and asked, and I want to thank the bill drafter. I've worked with her on education issues before. I think L002 satisfied the needs of the bill. But that wasn't my concern. My concern was for the lesson that I've learned from my good friend, the simple country lawyer from El Paso County. Words mean things. And if there were a contest, a dispute, a court case, the first determination that I've learned from my friend from El Paso County is, in determining legislative intent, is what do the words say, what do they mean? So did it make sense to change some of the words like paternity and father, but leave words like paternity or father, father-child relationship, fathers, throughout the rest of this statute? And my concern was that we might be fixing statute for some cases and making it more confusing for others. Might a judge or a jury or attorneys looking for opportunity or looking to solve a problem look at this and ask, why did they change this in a few places but not all? Does this section mean one set of conditions on one line and a different set of conditions in another? So I want to thank the bill sponsors. I also want to thank the bill drafter for coming up with this amendment. because I have confidence that this would address that issue, that the terminology would be consistent throughout that section of statute. And if you would support the amendment, and if you were intending to vote no, that's okay. If you would support the amendment and you were intending to vote yes, as I did in committee, I think it passed unanimously, I think that would be okay as well. So I did want to take time. I also want to thank my friend from El Paso County, because I probably wouldn't have gone to pick up the statute books if it hadn't have been for Senator Pat Stedman, and I wouldn't have had that perspective of what will these words mean to a court, and what would it mean if they were inconsistent if it hadn't been for my friend from El Paso County. So I ask for your aye vote on L002, and again, I want to thank the sponsors for their patience and the drafter for her diligence to try to make this right for all people in Colorado. Ask for an aye vote.
Motion is the adoption of L004. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L004 is adopted. Motion is the adoption of House Bill 1153. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. 1153 is passed. Thank you. Will the Majority Leader Moreno?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1214 lay over until tomorrow, Friday, April 1st.
Motion is for House Bill 1214 to be laid over to tomorrow, April 1st. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and 1214 will be laid over till tomorrow, April 1st. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1286?
House Bill 1286, Representatives Esgar and Garnett, Senators Moreno and Fenberg, concerning the payment of the expenses of the Legislative Department.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1286. There are no committee reports.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, 1286 is the annual legislative budget. And if you're curious about what's in the legislative budget, each one of you received this copy right here that details all the different changes that are included within the legislative budget. But this is the annual budget for both our chamber and the lower chamber across the hall, as well as the Joint Budget Committee, the Legislative Council, the Office of Legislative Legal Services, the Office of the State Auditor, and the Office of Legislative Workplace Relations. So every year we do this. Every year it comes before the long bill. And so encourage your support for House Bill 1286.
Mr. President, seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if anyone would like to adopt Senator Gardner or not.
We all love you, brother.
But that is, as the senator for Monument says, a matter for the prior bill, and we want to talk to this bill. I do not generally oppose the appropriation for the legislative department, and by the way, we do that in front of everything else to ensure that it doesn't get caught up on the first floor with the larger bills. So we want to make sure that the legislative department has its budget. But I have a concern about the budget this year. The Office of Legislative Legal Services has requested a very large increase from last year. I have served on the Committee on Legal Services, which is the first committee of supervision of the office for 14 sessions now. I believe myself to be one of their greatest supporters, but I believe a 20% increase is, I hesitate to say unwarranted, but inappropriate in one fell swoop. And the reality is, and I said this in committee, I believe, some weeks ago, I think the problem is structural. And we ought to take a good, hard look at what we do with our nonpartisan staff structurally. I hear routinely in the past couple of 3 years of the burdens upon the office, and I don't doubt that the workload of the office has increased astronomically but has also been, in terms of being able to accomplish that workload, facilitated by technology. But, you know, if the problem is too many late bills, and the numbers of bills when they occur, I find it a little astounding that members of the majority party would express shock and dismay in committee about how many late bills we have and how late they come and everything about it. And instead of trying to address that problem, say, well, we just need to hire a good deal more people so that we can process a good deal more late bills later. Like, you know, maybe we could drop 25 or so bills on maybe the 77th or so day of our 120. So I don't have a particular difficulty or problem with the Office of Legislative Legal Services. I have always said they are the finest group of attorneys I've been associated with in my 4 decades of law practice. But I don't think that just adding a bunch to the budget and a bunch of FTEs solves the problem. Again, I believe it's structural, and I think it needs a good deal more thought. And for that reason, I'm going to be a no vote on this bill.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too voted no in committee on the budget for OLS, and I agree with the good senator from Colorado Springs. I think they do a great job, and I believe the problem is structural, as he said, so I won't reiterate all that. But what I heard down in committee was that they work a lot of hours during the session, which they do, and then it was referred to as overtime hours. And I said, whoa, wait a minute, they're attorneys, they're lawyers. How are they entitled to overtime? And it was explained, no, that's not overtime. They get comp time for hours. Again, they're professional. They're salaried employees. The FSLA has guidance, rules, whatever you want to call them, on salaried employees. They don't even have to keep time cards. They work till they get the job done. They don't keep track of their hours. They shouldn't, because as a professional, as an attorney, as salaried, you work till you get the job done. And that kind of struck me as odd, being that they're professional, that why are they getting comp time? Work till you get the job done. So if they work a lot of hours during session, they need a day off, they don't count the hours. They will just take the time off. If they need a day off, they take it as, you know, just taking the day off. They don't keep track of it. So I had a real issue with professionals wanting comp time. And then it was the way I understood the bill or in committee was that they're going to ask for 6 new attorneys, 3 new editors, and I think an editor-in-chief or something there. So anyway, 10 new employees, and that should take care of all their efforts and all their extra time that they're putting in during session. That would take care of the problem. So because of that, I do have an amendment that I'd place here.
There's an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read amendment number 2?
Amendment
Senator
L002.
Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L002.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, since they are salaried employees and professionals, they're attorneys, basically what it says, if they get these new FTEs, that since they are salaried and professional, they're not entitled to comp time after the session's over. They don't get any extra pay. They don't get any comp time. If they need the time off after session, they can just take the time because they're not counting hours. They shouldn't be counting hours. They don't do timesheets or shouldn't be doing timesheets. Like every other business that are salaried, you work till you get the job done, and then if you have time, you take it off at a different time. In this case, after session. So I'd ask for an aye vote on 002.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have mixed feelings about this amendment. There's not a doubt in my mind that the staff of Legislative Legal Services during session in particular works 26 hours a day, to be a little hyperbolic. And it has been the policy to grant comp time into the interim for that, and that has seemed right and proper and appropriate to me. But what I have become troubled about is that there's so much comp time, and the policy about its use has been longstanding since long before this General Assembly, that staff members end up not using their vacation time, and at their retirement or departure, there's a large vacation payout because they got all of this comp time. And I'm not certain that L002 is exactly the right solution, but I think L002 and its passage will ensure that we start to get a handle on what the policy is and how it is, because the comp time should not then become a substitute for vacation time. And the state should not be paying out large amounts of unused vacation time because there was comp time in between. Because in the end, as the amendment says, these are professional and salaried employees. So I ask for an aye vote on L002.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, I'm going to encourage your no vote on Amendment L002. The legislative environment is unique. There's not really any other employer in Colorado that operates the way that the state legislature does. I think about, for example, something that just happened in the House where there's a 24-hour debate on a bill. Clearly, the House members were here for that debate, but so were the drafters. They had to prepare all the amendments to that bill. They were here, they worked 24 hours a day. So if any drafter, after working 24 hours a day, maybe sometimes multiple days a week when we're in session, that means they get some comp time when we're not in session, I don't see a problem with that. They deserve it. So I request your no vote on this amendment.
The motion, Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I wasn't always a simple country lawyer. One time I started to say not so many years ago. One time about 3 decades ago, I worked in a building on the 48th floor that looked down on the Capitol, and I've often asked myself if I made a good choice when I became engaged in politics. I might still have an office that looks down on the Capitol instead. But when I had that job, it was not unheard of to work 20 hours a day. It was not unheard of to work 7 days a week. Wasn't healthy particularly, but to say that, the legislature is unlike any other, well, that's true to a point, but to say that it is the only place where an attorney might be called upon to work extraordinary hours due to litigation or briefing schedules or any number of things, I'm going to tell you something. This simple country lawyer still does that sometimes. And so my point is, it is not extraordinary for legal professionals and others in similar kinds of professions to do likewise. I have a law practice still, and I've noticed in the building that I'm in, when I go into the office on Friday after leaving here, and I do a few things and make sure that the lights still turn on and all, and I leave, I notice that the CPAs on the second floor of that building are still there on Friday at 6 o'clock and after, because it happens to be tax season. My point is, it's not that unique. I do not, as I said earlier, I do not think it inappropriate to grant comp time, but I think our policy on granting of comp time has been so unrestrained that we end up paying out large amounts of vacation that we should not have to be doing, because it's like, well, I don't have to take vacation, I've got comp time. I don't need to take the entire day off. And the state has a good policy on that time. So, reasonable minds can differ. Just imagine what unreasonable minds might do. But I ask for an aye vote on L002.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a no vote on this as well. Look, I think there's a reasonable discussion to have here. This is about a policy, essentially an internal HR type policy. Let's have that conversation. I don't think doing an amendment in this manner is the right way to solve this policy. Even the good senator from El Paso County said that this might not be the right answer, but it's something. Let's figure out what the right answer is. And I would ask us to do that in a deliberative way, perhaps not on second reading on the floor, and instead do it, frankly, with the drafters and the folks who this absolutely impacts, to learn a little bit more about their life as a drafter and working in this crazy building with us, and get a sense of what actually would work, have their input on the practical implications of something like this, and perhaps we can come up together with something that makes a little bit more sense for the future. So that's what I would ask for, and urge a no vote on the amendment.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I think something needs to be done, and I appreciate your comments, and maybe we can do something if and when this amendment fails. But during the discussion, basically when I was bringing this up, the director said, hey, if you don't, in a nutshell, this is not a direct quote, but if you don't like it, you guys can change it. And that was the attitude. If you don't like it, change it. So I said, all right, if that's what your response is going to be, I'll try and change it. And so I think we have a culture here that just says, okay, we'll just do whatever we want. And that's part of the problem with term limits. The staff now runs the legislature. And if you don't like it, change it. So let's change it. We're trying. So I would ask for an aye vote, at least to get the ball rolling, so we can change that culture. And we can get some, guardrails around the comp time, because I believe it is a problem. So I'd ask for an aye vote.
Motion is the adoption of L002. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The noes have it, and L002 is lost. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to come up and just explain a little bit about my no vote. You'll notice that the legislative appropriation bill bears the names of 4 members of the executive committee, but neither of the minority leaders. Primarily, I decided to not be a prime sponsor of this bill for what appears on page 2, lines 11 and 12. And that points to the total FTE of the General Assembly will now be 169 FTE. You might remember last year that legislative aides were moved from hourly to 0.7 of an FTE and a salary, or hourly based on 0.7. Well, with 169 FTE, what this means is in one short year, we're moving them from 0.7 to 0.9. I would think that those of you who will be here next year or the year after, you'll probably see that become 1 FTE. But we had a long discussion last year about why 0.7 was the right number. Now it's 0.9. And as one of the managers, one of the leadership executive committee who manages one of the budgets. There's the legislative budget, but then there's 4 caucus budgets. One for the majority in each chamber, one each for the minority caucus in each chamber. And the chief of staff for our caucus and I, we manage very carefully staff salaries, the money that we get to decide the allocation for, so that the people of Colorado understand we don't actually have any direct control over a taxpayer dollar, but it's in a budget, and we can, for instance, designate people on our staff how much that person will make versus the next person. But it has to fit within that budget. What frustrates me about the conversion of aides from hourly to this 0.7 and then this pot of money that continues to grow is that the 4 of us who manage those budgets with our respective chiefs of staff don't have discretion over how it's used. We have to use it to pay legislative aides who are now going to be counted as 0.9 FTE. Well, I can't speak for Leader McKean, but I can speak for myself. I think he shares this perspective. One thing that no one in our caucus has asked for are more legislative aid hours. We're not using the appropriation, the allocation of those hours now, and if one member runs short, we can reallocate. We do have that discretion, but it's hard for me to say thank you for giving us even more of what we're not using, all of what we currently have. We're not using our current allocation, but it seems 2 years in a row at least that the folks in the majority don't have enough. Okay, part of the explanation might be additional responsibilities of being in the majority. Well, I've been here 12 years and I've been in the majority for 6. And I understand that in this chamber, the president, the majority leader, and maybe committee chairs do have additional responsibility. But we all represent an equal number of constituents. During the interim, it's equally quiet on one side of the Capitol versus the other, one end to the other. If you go over to Sherman Street or Legislative Services Building, it's equally quiet around here. And nobody in our caucus has asked for more legislative aid hours last year or this year. So the people of Colorado, thank you for the extra hours. Thank you for the extra taxpayer dollars that are paying for this. We don't need it. But if I had the ability to hire talent in places that might be a benefit to the caucus, then I might be more open, more interested in having this. But the way it's allocated right now, we're getting more of what we're not using all of now. So I will be a no vote.
Motion is the adoption of House Bill 1286. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. 1286 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1247 to tomorrow, Friday, April 1st.
The motion is to lay over House Bill 1247 to tomorrow, April 1st. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. 1247 will be laid over to tomorrow, April 1st. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion before the committee is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee will rise and report.
Senate will come to order. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills in consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1089 is amended. House Bill 1165 is amended. House Bill 1153 is amended. House Bill 1286 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1214, House Bill 1247 laid over until 4/1/2022 and retaining their place on the calendar.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
Motion is the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. House Bill 1089 is amended. House Bill 1165 is amended. House Bill 1153 is amended. House Bill 1286 passed in second reading in order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1214, House Bill 1247 laid over until 4/1/2022 and retaining their place on the calendar. Consideration of governor's appointments. Consent calendar. Will the clerk please read all the appointments listed on the consent calendar?
Member of the Colorado Traumatic Brain Injury Trust Fund Board, effective July 1st, 2021, for a term expiring June 30th, 2024. Kenneth Anderson Scott, MPH, PhD of Denver, Colorado, reappointed.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of the one appointment on the governor's appointments consent calendar, which includes Mr. Kenneth Scott as a member of the Colorado Traumatic Brain Injury Trust Fund Board.
Is there any discussion? The motion is a confirmation of the appointment on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 2 excused, the appointment is confirmed. Committee reports.
March 30th, 2022, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 138 be amended as follows and as so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation.
Message from the governor.
Wednesday, March 30th, 2022, Colorado Senate. Honorable members of the Colorado Senate, pursuant to the authority vested in the office of the Governor of the State of Colorado, I have the honor to inform you that I have approved and filed with the Secretary of State the following acts. Senate Bill 20, Court Reporter Administering Oaths or Affirmations, approved on Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 3:08 p.m. Senate Bill 26, Oil and Gas Operated Property Tax Procedures, approved on Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 3:08 p.m. Senate Bill 38, Expand Water Resources Review Committee to include agriculture, approved Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 3:08 p.m. Senate Bill 50, Work Opportunities for Offenders in Department of Corrections, approved on Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 1:31 p.m. Senate Bill 92, Update Colorado Probate Code, approved on Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 3:08 p.m. Sincerely, Jared Polis, Governor.
Signing of bills.
The President has signed Senate Bill 3, 7686, 121, and 141.
Announcements. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Senate State Veteran Military Affairs Committee will be meeting upon adjournment at 11 o'clock, roughly, and we'll be hearing two bills, 1093 and 162, in the Old Supreme Court chambers.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Judiciary Committee will be meeting at 1:30 in Senate Committee Room 352 to hear House Bill 1237, 1003, 1270, 1082, 1224, and Senate Bills 5 and 67 for action only. Look forward to seeing you.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Transportation and Energy will be meeting 15 minutes upon adjournment. We will be hearing the confirmations for the Electric Transmission Authority, Senate Bill 170, and House Bill 1139.
Senator Hawkins Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if you have the ability to join the Colorado Pharmacists Society, their legislative reception is today. It's at a really close, fun place, the University Club. It's from 4:30 to 6:30. They wanted me to tell you there will be food and drinks there. Come and let's talk drugs. Thank you.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, if you will look in your mailbox, or maybe your aide might look in your mailbox later today, you will find a copy of this book written by David B. Kopel. David is an attorney. He works at the Independence Institute, and as the inscription reads inside, he recognizes his father, former State Representative Jerry Kopel. Representative Kopel represented Denver, and he was in the legislature before term limits. He was in the legislature for many years. Representative Kopel had a reputation that he would read the Journal every morning and find mistakes, and rather than just read this little statement every morning, would debate at length and amend the Journal to correct it. I had the opportunity in my first 2 years in the legislature over in the House, 11 and 12, to work with former Representative Jerry Kopel on something that he, and I believe former State Senator Steve Durham, invented: the Sunrise Sunset Review process in Colorado, a way to limit the amount of business regulation that might occur during a general session or during a 2-year assembly. I had a bill in mind during the 7 years that I was out there in the lobby that I wanted to run if I was ever a member of the General Assembly. It failed my first year in the House, but with help from Representative Jerry Kopel, it passed. And then he passed away. I had the opportunity to work with Representative Kopel just at the right time, a Democrat from Denver. He was brilliant, and he was excited to be part of the legislative process. And now his son carries on that tradition. David has written this book about the Colorado Constitution. I'm excited to read this book. Constitutional law and history, but please look for this book. It is about the Colorado Constitution. It is about what we do here in this unique state. And David, to the Kopel family, thank you for your hard work here. And I will never forget the memorial that we had for your father, the good Representative Jerry Kopel. Mr. President, thank you for this moment. May I continue on a completely different topic?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a fun point, I've asked this before, guess which team in the NHL has 100 points, the most of any team in the NHL? Yes, the Colorado Avalanche. Tune in tonight. They have another game, maybe 102 points. Go Avs!
Further announcements. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate adjourn until tomorrow, Friday, April 1st at 9 a.m.
You have heard the motion, I think. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will adjourn until 9 a.m. Friday, April 1st, 2022.